you posted an emotional thread on Twitter that really touched me. Today is your mother's birthday, and you spoke about her and your experience with her and her being in the criminal justice system as well too. I just thought it was really emotional. Could you just share that with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Today and July 21st every year is a really hard day for me. It's my mom's birthday. It would have been my mom's birthday. She passed away in 2006 in a jail cell in Mississippi. My mom suffered from bipolarity as well as depression and several anxiety disorders for the majority of her life. She was going through a manic episode my junior year of high school, and instead of getting mental health treatment and mental health support, she was arrested. My mom spent a year and a half in jail, not being charged with anything, largely because we honestly just, my family was poor. We couldn't afford bail. And within that year and a half, we found out that my mom had stage 4 colon cancer, and she ended up passing away on the floor by herself in that jail. So it's a hard time.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. This system is really crazy. It's
And it's,
crazy, and
it's hard, and I highlight it specifically because I know from working in the criminal justice reform space, because of what happened with my own family, that there's so many who have mental health issues. Over 85% of those who are incarcerated right now are there for mental health problems, because our nation has for the longest used our jails and prison systems as mental health facilities. These are not people who are hardened criminals. These are people who need help. And instead of providing that help and getting them resources and ensuring that they live healthy and productive lives, we incarcerate them. And I hope that we reach a point where we start moving towards clinics, start moving towards mental health therapists, start moving towards reducing the stigma, start actually paying attention to, instead of criminalizing, those who honestly are basically crying out for help. And what we do is basically just lock them away.
well, clearly, even though your mother is gone too soon, she helped to raise a magnificent woman. You're incredible. And that's why I like having you on the show, Amisha, because you talk with passion. And many of the things that we talk to, whether people listening or not, or see you on Black News Channel or Roland Martin show, these things are personal to you. This is not, you doing a study or you doing an article. Many of these issues go right to your home, go right to your family, and you could feel that on air. And that's why I just love having you on, because these are personal to you. And not saying for someone else that it isn't personal. That's great. It isn't personal for them. My gosh. But for you, it's personal. So that's why you're a fighter. And I love having you on. And I want to thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Because I'm sure other folks can relate to it, you
Thank
know?
you. And I want people to know that, you're not alone. As somebody who had a parent incarcerated when I was in high school, I was lucky enough to be close to turning 18 before my mom got really sick. So I was able to adopt my younger siblings. In many cases, that is not the case. And the rest of your family is fostered out. And I did my very best to make sure that that did not happen to my siblings, meanwhile, trying to figure out a criminal justice system that, quite frankly, is non-intelligible even for adults, much less a teenager at the time. I think that for those who are going through that, who still have to get up and go to school every day, or get their siblings ready to go to school, become instant parents themselves, it is a hard thing, but there is something on the other side. Now, I will say that as somebody who has mentored young people who are going through that process as well, you have to know that I think that God did some amazing things when he built Black people, not only in terms of
Right.
giving us strength, but also in terms of helping to, keep us going through things that honestly would break your average person. So I
Yeah.
definitely believe in that. And, I'm a person of faith, and it's a long road, but I thank you, and I thank your listeners for just, coming with me on this journey and always being so supportive.
I do want to make sure that we shine a little bit of light on this story that you may not have heard of. Her name is Tanisha Chappelle. I hope I said her last name right. She died in police custody. This is not getting the kind of news that it should, but I want to make sure that make sure that my audience is aware of it. She's from Indiana. She died in police custody. She has a daughter. She was booked into jail on May 26th after being arrested on shoplifting and other charges. The family could not afford the bail. Just listen to this news clip.
A Louisville family begging for answers after learning their loved one died in the Jackson County Jail. WDRB's Breanne Martin talked with Tanisha Chappelle's family, who, for now, is left filling in the blanks.
That's right, Joel. Chappelle's family says they hope someone will eventually give them those answers because the last time they talked to her, things were not going well.
Her name is Tanisha Chappelle. She was funny, loud. She didn't back down. She had a big personality.
Anisha Morrell says her sister meant the world to them.
It is unsettling. We want justice. We want answers. We have a lot of questions and no answers still.
Answers into her death, which Indiana State Police say happened shortly after she was transported from the Jackson County Jail to Chenectadi Memorial Hospital July 16th. Chappelle was arrested in May on shoplifting and other charges and held on a $4,000 bond.
My baby died in jail. In jail. I don't know. I feel like I failed. I don't know.
Yeah, this is really a sad story, and my condolences to the family. Another reason why it's a sad story, I don't know if you've heard of this, Ameshia, it makes it really complicated because cash bail has been reformed in New York City, where basically in most of New York, they've eliminated cash bail for pretty much all offenses except for violent offenses. But now there has been talk of reinstating that because they feel like that's the reason why so many criminals are on the street right now in New York City, because all these folks are going to jail, they're coming out and they're committing more crimes, some of them gun crimes. And they're blaming it on cash bail. And I know it's complicated. We don't want criminals on the street, but for every criminal who does get on the street, there are thousands and thousands of cases like Tanisha, whose family couldn't afford the cash bail, or Khalif Browder, whose family couldn't afford the cash bail. So I don't know what the answer is, but I am nervous about, I don't know if the reason why crime in New York is high is because of bail reform, but I'm nervous about this idea of let's go back to what it was 2 or 3 years ago and lock them all up and see what happens, because there could be a case like this right here. So yeah, your thoughts, Ameshia?
The right conservatives are using this as red meat to beef up policing in Black and brown communities, and that's just plain and simple. Very familiar with the bail reform in New York. I actually worked on bail reform at the national level in various states, including New York, for the past 10 years. And my frustration now going into this next election cycle is that what we see is the right using policing and the fight to get criminal justice reform, specifically policing reform, bail reform, to fall by the wayside, because they're saying that violent crime has increased because of people who have been released on bail, and that cash bail kept dangerous people behind bars. I'll tell you something, Clay. Bail reform and our fight to get bail reform pushed, and I've done it in northern cities as well as southern cities and cities on the East Coast, the West Coast, and every place in between. Bail reform is complicated, but it isn't one that we shouldn't have done decades ago, and it definitely isn't something that by and large even applies to violent criminals. Bail reform has largely been passed in states with the caveat that when it comes to cash bail, those who have been convicted on violent crimes or those who have been charged with violent crimes still will be behind bars. So the element that is being used here isn't even factual, because again, the majority of people who've been released who don't have cash bail attached to them anymore, places that have gotten rid of cash bail elements, those apply specifically to individuals who were nonviolent to begin with, nonviolent offenders. What we know about nonviolent offenders is that the overwhelming majority will not automatically become violent regardless of the circumstance. What we're seeing in this interim, post the pandemic of last year and all of the world changes and a lot of the unemployment and certain industries just disappearing and people facing, actually 7 million Americans facing eviction in the next 2 weeks, is that people are desperate, and desperation breeds crime. And we know that. What we also know is that when they don't see a way out, people who otherwise would never have thought about crime will commit crime. That has nothing to do with bail reform. What the right is doing is utilizing these things that we have fought for decades and trying to roll them back. They also want to reinstitute chokeholds. They also want to reinstitute stop and frisk. They also want to reinstitute plainclothes police officers who basically scale our communities and terrorize young people every day. They want to put more cops in schools to brutalize students who are just going to school to learn. All of this is an effort to revamp what we saw in the 80s at when they were trying to crack down on the crack epidemic. All of those things failed then, they're damn sure going to fail now. We can't buy into that narrative. In New York, there's absolutely no study, there's absolutely no evidence that shows that bail reform has a correlation with a rise in crime. Just like it doesn't exist in Chicago, just like it doesn't exist in New Orleans, just like it doesn't exist in Detroit. The evidence just is not there. It is something that Republicans like to say. It's something that some Democrats have even started saying, because there are so many people out in these streets running afraid that they're buying into this message, even though it's coming from bad voices.
Eric Adams said it. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. So
all that cash bail does is punish poor people and poor families. As someone whose mom died in a jail cell because of a mental health issue, because we could not afford bail, it frustrates me. Because at the end of the day, you have so many Americans who can't even afford to bury their loved ones when they pass away, much less come up with money in a short amount of time to get a loved one out of jail who shouldn't have been there to begin with. Cash bail burdens poor people because criminals who actually can afford it, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, they just write their check and call it good and get out, even though they've committed crazy atrocities towards people. That's how it works when you're rich and powerful. Money bail has always impeded Black and brown people of impoverished populations. It has never done anything to dissuade or stop criminals who have means.
I can recall when R. Kelly went behind bars one of these times, and remember, one of his fans posted his bail. One of his fans. R. Kelly didn't even have the money, but he had the fame. And they put the man who married Aaliyah at 16, and there was a marriage certificate. One of his fans posted his bail. So you're absolutely right. I completely agree with you. I'm telling you, what we're going to see with these midterms is a bunch of remixed versions of Willie Horton ads. For those that don't know Willie Horton, look it up. But that's what we're going to see. And what Democrats need to do is think of some ads like something, if it's okay with her family, of course, something like Tanisha Campbell. Here's an example of what happens when someone can't post bail. Behind bars for shoplifting? Who cares? Who cares?